Sophie Hannah.
I'm Nishi Rose.
And I'm Anissa. Welcome to episode 49 of Ethnically Speaking, the show where we discuss everything affecting the UK's highly melanated communities, from current affairs to pop culture and everything in between. We are very excited today as we are joined by our final fresh face, here to join us hopefully on the panel. Welcome to the show, Mona.
Hello.
So Mona, for our audience who may not be as familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I am Mona, sometimes go by Mo or Moans, don't really mind. I am 26 years old. I'm an English literature graduate. I am a self-proclaimed BFG, big friendly giant. I'm just a little shy of 6 foot, so I'm a long-limbed lady. And I'm super chatty and super friendly and very excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you, Mona, and we're actually going to have Mona and Nishi joining us over the next few episodes. But as usual, we are still going to keep it 100, as today we are talking about the culture wars between millennials and Gen Z. So, Gen Z are those aged between 16 to 24, and they have taken to TikTok in huge numbers to mock millennials, so those who are born in the 80s to mid-90s, over everything from hairstyles to skinny jeans and even the correct use of emojis. So ladies, what do you think about the social media war between millennials and Gen Z? And do you relate to the official generation that you are a part of? Or do you think the idea of generation is outdated?
So I would probably say I originally thought, yeah, I'm very much a millennial, being 34. I guess I'm like the early millennial, late millennial, whichever way you want to kind of word it. But I thought, yeah, I really identify with it. But I think then looking into this topic, I was like, actually, I don't even know if the generations exist. I don't know if that's controversial. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that they do anymore. And I think the wars, I don't think there's so much generational wars. I think I've come to see them as kind of age wars, like all in the sense of fun, but I think they're more age wars than generational wars, because the idea that millions, billions of people around the world can fit into one specific category of definition, I'm like, I don't actually think that that's possible. I think more so it's about when you grow up in a certain era, there are certain things that are going to shape the person that you are. So for example, for millennials, you know, growing up pre-internet and then being part of the internet, witnessing 9/11 when I went to school, and that changed the world like dramatically. Even when Janet Jackson got her nipple out at the Super Bowl, and then TV changed completely. And like, then they started working in a delay. So it wasn't actually live anymore. They created this space of seconds. So if something happened, they could cut it. Like, all these things have really shaped the generation that I'm a part of. So I think it's more so the events that happen, rather than saying millions of people in one generation have all similar or likewise characteristics to each other.
So I kind of disagree in the sense that, so within millennials, for example, I was initially skeptical, kind of along those lines as well, thinking like, how can so many people, that category is so massive, it ranges almost 15 years. And like similarity between somebody who's 25 and 40 is huge, right? But on the other hand, I was thinking more about the way that millennials are broken down. And so one of these things that people say is that this kind of idea of a crisis cohort, which usually refers to people who turned 18 during the financial crash and are turning 30 now during this global pandemic. And basically their adult lives have been bookended by these two really intense, life-changing, unique crises. And I think within that 10-year span, so I mean, I'm 29, almost 30, so the compression though, but I think there is definitely, if I look at people my age, there is this thing. So, for example, within this age group, I think that there were fewer opportunities, for example, in the labour market when we became adults. And as a result, we've seen sort of nomadic careers in a sense. People move from, I don't know, in my case, I went from politics to media, kind of looking ahead into other things I can do with kind of what I've learned. It's no longer as hierarchical. You know, you start in one organisation and you rise up, and that's how it is. And I think that was definitely a result of circumstance. On the other hand, you know, we talk about, you know, the rent crisis, for example, and previous generations in the millennial age group now, so turning 30, would have owned homes for example, and that's so far out of reach for many of us now. And I think that that is a result of generational factors, i.e. like product of the times that we came into adulthood and have kind of been shaped in that sense. So with housing, for example, as I say, I'm 29, I'm turning 30, and I live in a commune. So I live in a former commercial building, which is a former office and a former bank that has been knocked together. And the location's amazing, which is sort of central London, but the actual place where I live, I live with 20 people in a kind of modern day commune, house guardianship, which is what it's called. And that's sort of the only affordable way I can live in central London. But I mean, it's insane. When I was 18, I would never have thought, God, when I'm 30, this will be my living situation. And obviously I do it by choice. It's very interesting other ways. But, I don't think that is definitely a result of growing up when I did.
But then I don't think that you and I disagree, because I was saying I feel like we're more crafted as a generation by the things that are going on in society that affects us, rather than, because for millennials they will say we're narcissistic and we're the laziest generation, we're this, we're that, we're like, there's all these various things. I'm like, when it comes to internal characteristics, I'm like, I don't know if we can put that on a whole generation. But like you're saying, we've grown up with a very different idea of living now. My parents would have been like, you bought a house when you got married, because you could pay $5,000 for a deposit. Whereas now you're like, some people are like, I'll never buy a house because I'll never be able to afford it if I stay single. So I think, I agree, I think it's the life circumstances that really craft things for generations.
Yeah. I think that I agree with what you've said, Sophie. I feel that, in my opinion, there's more similarities that kind of link us together rather than separate us apart. So I think I just missed out about 2-3 years of being Gen Z. So I'm kind of like, in my opinion, I'm a bit like in and out of both. But I feel that because the generation that we live in now, we all have the same access to the same content. So in terms of like social media, access to celeb gossip, access to social economical issues that's going on, materialistic things like phones, laptops, technology, clothes, we actually all, there's not really much censorship between the ages. So we're all indulgent in the same type of content. So I don't actually feel that there's much differences in terms of our, I wouldn't say thought process, because that is quite evident in the way Gen Z and millennials kind of conduct themselves. But I feel that the issues that bring us together is more than what separates us. So I know, like on TikTok, for example, they're like poking fun at like skinny leg jeans and the middle parts and all these things that separate us. But in my opinion, I was ready to say goodbye to skinny leg jeans a long time ago. We've been in the house for a whole year now. I don't think I've actually reached for skinny leg jeans in ages. But aside from that, I just feel like there actually isn't too much discrepancies between the Gen Z and millennials, but that's just my opinion personally.
Yeah, I didn't even know that an actual war was going on. I'm not like a massive TikToker. I only got TikTok when Justin Bieber was doing that concert, so I went to go listen to Justin. So apart from that, like, I'm not a TikToker, so I didn't realise a war was going on. And then when I looked into it and I was like, oh, okay, but some of the things that they were saying, I was thinking, yeah, but I like this, but I'm not a part of Gen Z. I'm technically a millennial. So like, where does it leave me? It was a little bit like Mona. I was like in and out, like, where does it leave me? And then that's what kind of made me think maybe this idea of generations is slightly outdated. Like for me, it makes sense when you're talking about like the baby boomers, but it doesn't specifically make as much sense for me now. And especially like some of the points that you guys raised earlier, we have a lot of access to the same thing. And I personally thought some of this was just personal preference rather than like a generational attribute, because whether you want to wear your hair in a side part or a middle part, like, makes no difference. And the girls have been wearing middle part for years. It doesn't matter what generation you've been in. So I was honestly really, like, I was wildly confused by this. I was like, people ain't wearing middle parts anymore, people ain't wearing side parts anymore, and you can't wear tight skinny jeans. I was like, what the hell is going, like, I was honestly like perplexed at it. But then when I started to see a lot of the people that were, I guess, more of the Gen Z that who were like really getting into this war, I just thought to myself, oh, they don't really like, these aren't people that I would engage with on a day-to-day anyway. So there's, whatever they're saying now really holds no reference to me specifically. So I will say, I do think the idea of generations, I wouldn't say it's outdated, but I'm just saying I don't know how which is probably contradictory, but I just don't know how relevant it is anymore.
I think what's really interesting though, in terms of like this Gen Z thing, is that part of me thinks it's just people growing up and starting to look at people who are older and starting to question things that they do. Because if we're thinking about people who are like 18 to like early 20s, in my opinion, let me say that like up front, like you start to look at what people who are doing are older and you're like, I wouldn't do that. Like skinny jeans, that don't make no sense. Or why are people obsessed with Harry Potter? Like he's just a wizard in a book. I was never obsessed with Harry Potter. I don't care about anyone's house. I just don't care. But
Same,
my
Sophie.
thing is, it was just not my thing. But I think it's more so like it's an age thing. And I think when you're 18 to 20 something and you're starting to really be able to experience the world for yourself because you've got more independence, you're officially an adult, you start to think like, I have the know on everything. Like, yeah, I know what's in, I know what's hip, I know what's cool, because everything in our society pretty much is catered towards being young, like an 18 to 20 something young. Like those are the people you predominantly see on TV. Those are people in advertisements. It's like this whole thing around youth. So when you get there, it's kind of like, we're in, we know what's hip. But I'm like, in 10 years time, the next generation are just going to be saying the exact same thing about you, because it just goes in cycles. So looking at what they're saying, I'm like, cool, like no problem. Am I going to throw my skinny jeans away? Probably not. Am I going to get some baggier ones? I probably need to because of the pandemic. But like, for me, I'm just like, it all goes in cycles. It's all push and pull.
But even things like, sorry, not to jump in, but even things like this whole idea of, oh, I prefer baggy jeans than mum jeans, like that's not even a new Gen Z creation. It's like a throwback. It's kind of like, so what are you talking? So where does the line end if we just keep throwing things back and recycling? Whose generation owns what? So it was just really contradictory when I saw about the mum jeans. I was like, girl, people have been wearing those Topshop mum jeans from the day. I don't understand what you're talking about right now. Like, it's crazy.
I think similar to what you said, Anissa, is I just saw it as personal preference. I didn't really see it as a whole war that was going on. And I feel like the point that we're at right now is pretty much everything that we have done is just a recycling of what's been done before. And the generation right now is very accepting of taking old trends, spinning it on its head. There's nothing that they're going to do in terms of fashion, styling, hair, clothes. There's nothing that they're going to do that hasn't really been done. And I feel like they're quite accepting of that. Like you can walk down the road and see so many different people rocking, whether it's like a vintage look, an emo look, something from the noughties. And it's not like, oh, why are you wearing that? It's so out of date. It's just, hey, that's that person's style, and it's that person's style for the day. So this whole throwing this away and poking fun at this and poking fun at that, I really just think it's something that on the internet people have kind of ran with and gone a bit wild with, because when you look at people aside from the internet and aside from social media, people are living harmoniously, and I don't really get mocked for going outside like, oh my God, you've got Crocs up. Oh, that's so 2002. I don't hear anyone doing it. If anything, people are like, yeah, cool. I'm a trendsetter, they'll do it too. It's just recycling over and over again.
Do you know what? I feel like I slightly disagree with you though, Mona. Like, yeah. I don't know if I think Gen Z believe that they're recycling things as opposed to thinking this is trendy, this is new, this is hot, and we're running with it. Because I don't know if they're specifically linking it to the eras that it comes from. Because like, I think in terms of fashion, I don't think there's been a new design in fashion since probably the 70s. Like I think since about then, everything has just been recycled. I remember when I was 13, going to like a under 21s rave. Wearing these
you was in the club from young?
Yeah, I was, because my sister was a little older and my mum was insistent that my sister had to take me everywhere. So I got to go to like all the young parties. So yeah. But I was wearing these sky blue pedal pushers and I thought they were the stuff. You couldn't tell me nothing. Honestly, I thought I was hot. And my mum was just like, are those back in fashion? I was like, no, these are new. These are like new, like pedal. And she was just like, those are not new. I used to wear those like when I was in the 60s. She was like, I'm not wearing those again. So like, and that was me thinking of it because I'm seeing them for the first time. And I wonder if this generation are now seeing things for the first time and thinking, oh, it's really cool, it's really trendy, like bucket hats. Like I saw Beyonce wearing them for like Adidas Ivy Park. And I was like, I would never wear that. It's like what LL Cool J used to wear back in the day when he was talking about round the way girls. That's like 80s stuff. But now she's shopping it because people are like, yeah, I've got my bucket hat. So I'm just like, guys, And if you want to make fun of our generation, you're literally wearing things from 40 years ago. Like, nothing is new. So I don't think that they realize that it's a recycle, because I feel like I didn't, unless like they're really up on it. Who knows?
Sophie, you took me back with that pedal pushers. I loved
You
that.
Girl,
I loved my pedal pushers when I was
Trust
younger.
me.
You don't have to tell me twice.
But it's like stuff that's come back. Like, I'm sorry guys, I'm talking. Let me just, I'll say this now, shut up. But it's like, what's coming to fashion? Like when I saw ponchos again, I was like, ponchos are back?
God.
I was just like, I'm not wearing that. I was just like, I promised myself when I was a teenager, never again. And then those coats that are like dustbin bags, like dustbin liners. Do you remember like the black
yes,
coats
those shiny like black
exactly
ones.
those are back. I used to wear that to school, and we thought we were rocking like the top thing, and I was like, I said I'd never wear it again. So all this stuff is just coming back and back and back and back. So yeah.
But I think there's also like, I guess like the way to describe it, what I'm trying to say is that it's not just about recycling the fashion and the way they're kind of viewing fashion in that way. I feel like this war exposes a dark truth about Gen Z. And that is like Gen Z, like any report you read. So for example, there's been tons and tons of research that's always done into youth and into youth trends, because they're the most lucrative group for marketers, for fashion designers, for shops, and so on and so on. And the one thing that supposedly kind of unites culturally this group is this idea of freedom of expression. And so this belief that whereas millennials were about experiences, Gen Z is about authenticity. And if you look at their kind of idols and the people they really admire, Billie Eilish being like the obvious example of this Gen Z kind of person to uphold. What is her fashion and why is it successful? So she rails against the sort of sexualization of women. She wears baggy clothes, she dyes her hair green. And much of what she says about this is actually she's trying to move away from the male gaze and move into this idea that, you know, express who you want to be. So you're subscribing to your own ideas and interests, not to society or fashions themselves. Anyway, what has been shown by this war, because the more we interrogate this war between millennials and Gen Z, it's not a war at all. It's a one-sided battle. Millennials aren't saying anything. Literally, it's just Gen Z who are like insulting and making fun of their predecessors, their forebearers' fashions and styles. This exposes a serious hypocrisy in what we're led to believe Gen Z are about. And so basically, my view is that this is all to do with social media and this kind of what are Gen Z really good at, that is personal branding. And so as a generation, they've invented this brand for themselves that speaks to the current trend or desire, drive for authenticity. But actually, they're just as self-serving and as driven by trends, fashion, styles, and the idea of being cool as the rest of us. And that's what I think.
Oh, Nishi, you read to Gen Z to filth. I said, oh, yeah, funny. But I absolutely agree with you, because as I said, I didn't know the war was happening. And so then when I went to research it, it was all the Gen Z people, because I think maybe on the way that I've curated a lot of my feeds on social media, maybe it's just only millennials. And I think none of them were concerned with whatever was going on with Gen Z and what was going on with TikTok. And so it made sense to me. I was like, Gen Z, they have time on their hands. They have time to do things like this. So this is probably a lot, definitely one-sided. I 100% agree with you on that.
But I wonder, like, Nushi, again, like, I wonder what you're saying that Gen Z is said to be all up in authenticity, which I think there is definitely a social activism element that is coming up, especially now because of social media and media in general, the technological boom. We are able to see things and know things that we were never able to see before. So I think that has given rise to people standing up for more rights. But I don't see that as being massively different from the women's movement in the 1970s, where women were saying, like, I'm not going to wear, a bra, like maybe extreme forms of feminism, but also like saying that actually I'm not going to prescribe to a role that people are going to give me, like I'm going to live out loud. When we see the civil rights was happening in America and in the United Kingdom, and when people were standing up for their rights and protesting, and there were Bristol bus boycotts and they were one in America, like, people have always been doing these sort of things. But I think as generations, like I saw this YouTube video that was saying it's all about marketing. Like it sells more newspapers to talk about generations because you're writing about articles, you're writing about this, you're writing about that. When really elements that you can see in one generation, you have seen throughout various other ones as well.
I think the thing to note though is that because this generation has the spotlight on them, they are the next presidents, whatever they're going to be, but the spotlight is on them because they're the next ones. When it was our turn, the spotlight was on us in whatever sense that meant. So whether that was in the newspapers or whether that was in, Channel 4 News, whatever we had, the spotlight was on us then. Now it's just amplified times 10 because they essentially have control of their narratives. All they've got to do is upload a video and put it on YouTube, and it's their version of it. Depending on how it hits on the internet, it hits. So it might seem like it's self-indulged and it's all about them, but I don't actually think that it's their fault, because the monster that is the internet, they did not do that. This is a product of the internet, of social media, but they didn't have a hand to play in the creation of it. They're just basically benefiting off the outcome, if that makes sense. Because you're absolutely right, there is no difference between it. It's just the fact that now we live in a generation where it's a lot more amplified. Somebody can't sneeze down the road without it being put on BuzzFeed, spread it around, and it's like, obviously someone sneezed before. What's so special about this person? It just so happens to be that they sneezed and someone caught it and it's been spread around like wildfire. That person didn't do it deliberately. It just so happens to be that that's how it's gone round.
Yeah. I just want to clarify. I love Gen Z. This is just in the context of the war. No. I think as a generation, I agree. All generations replicate each other. That's part of being young, as they strive to make a difference, and enormous self-interest, because everything is new to you, and so is adulthood, and so is freedom. And the exciting thing about being 18 is thinking you can change the world, and the world is a better place for it. But I just mean in the context of this specific conflict, because outside of it, I totally agree with you, Mona. It would be very wrong to undermine that entire age group just because we've seen it in different forms before. And I also agree with you, Sophie, progress comes, battles are fought and won because people actually are impassioned and do have this drive and excitement and want to do good that comes most of the time from young people. So yeah, I agree. I didn't mean that as overall, I hate all young people and they make me feel old, but which is also true. This is honestly, when I was sort of looking up for this conversation and kind of looking into this war as well, the one kind of big takeaway I did get was a bit of sadness, knowing that I'm now of the generation, or have been for several years, according to all these reports, that is, no longer that relevant. Or seen as young.
Sophie's gonna have a heart attack.
And this is the bit I want to talk about, because Mona kind of touched on it, and now Nushi, you've kind of touched on it. And I'm thinking that's why we can't allow ourselves to a certain extent to buy into this, because Mona was saying, it's because they're in now and they're I'm just like, why? Why is it that when you get to the age of 30, and this isn't at you, I'm just saying, the way that we've set up generations, that you get to the age of 30, you're old and you're not relevant.
Yeah.
The things that you stand up for don't mean anything. We need now to be looking to teenagers and saying, let's look at this generation and see. I'm just like, we don't time out at 30. We can still talk about social justice things. And we spend more, this is something that my husband said to me, and I was like, it's so true. When we get obsessed with youth and being young, we spend more time out of our 20s. If you live an average normal life up until 70s, 80s or whatever, we spend more time out of our 20s than we do in it. But yet we glamorize and that age group as that's the time when you can stand up for things. That's the time when you're young. I'm just like, it's not true. And we can't buy into it or allow ourselves to feel because the TVs and media isn't looking at us anymore, then that means we haven't got anything relevant to say. Because the 20s, and I guess everyone in here is on their 20s apart from me, so I could just sound like the old chick who's talking about it because I feel old, but I don't. When you get into the older you get, you start to know yourself more. And there's a beauty that comes with that, and knowing what you like and what you don't like. And like you're saying, Nushi, from going from politics to media to something else, actually, I'm growing, I'm developing, I'm going to see where it leads me. You don't get that in your 20s. You get it by learning what you have in your 20s and moving through it. So I'm not here for the ageism of it all. Every generation is relevant.
Well put, Sophie. I like that. It was like a closing speech. I don't feel like more needs to be said. I guess whether you believe in generations or you don't believe in generations, thank you so much for watching and listening to another episode of Ethnically Speaking. Let's keep the conversation going. Are you Team Gen Z or Team Millennial? Or do you not even believe in generations? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want even more from us, be sure to click the link in the description below to sign up to our email list, where you can get extra ethnic delivered direct to your inbox once a week. And I'd like to take this time to thank our very special guests for the day, Mona and Nushi. You can connect with them on social media. You can find Nushi on Twitter @NushiRose, and you can find Mona on Instagram @IntoTheJungle, where you can see everything that they are doing outside of Ethnically Speaking. For a summary of everything we've discussed today, head over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ES049. There's a link in the description below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. We will see you on Monday, where we'll be talking about ordering expensive food on the menu when you are not paying for it. You do not want to miss it. So until then, make sure you wash your hands, you wear your mask, you social distance, and you stay safe.